Welcome to another Ember Weekend. I'm Jonathan Jackson.
I'm Robert Jackson.
And I'm Chase McCarthy.
And we are Ember Weekend collectively. And we are going to talk about some Ember stuff after a long, what would you call that? A vacation? Sabbatical?
Hiatus.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that a lot.
We were busy shipping all the things, don't worry.
Some people are shipping things. I've been working on shipping different things. Old things. Ancient things, I might even say.
What is old has become new again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 113 is the new hotness, the new 40. Okay, so we're going to jump into an episode that we are already preemptively calling Bring Your Own Babel. So let's jump into it.
All right, so of course, the first thing we're going to talk about is the Octane release coming up. What can you tell us, Rob?
Yeah, so originally a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, we had a blog post that said that Octane would be coming in Ember 3.14. We had a preview period at that point. Lots of the guides and docs and ecosystem stuff has been going really well during this 3.13 to 3.14 cycle. 3.14 is scheduled to release any time now at this point, and the relative feeling of those of us in the core team is that we just need a little bit more polish. So I think the result is going to be that we will almost certainly be having Octane after 3.14, and hopefully that's 3.15, could be later if there's other issues. The thing that we're seeing here is that, hey, we have a train model, and when things are ready, that's when they get shipped. And if they're not ready yet, they don't make the train this time around. So,
yeah. As someone who frequently misses trains, I get that analogy. So, just to kind of like a 10,000 foot view here for our listeners who may not be like in the know on Octane. Octane is a subset of features that represent what is a moment of, what is it called? Tom Dell has a fancy word for it.
Coherence,
that's right. And in 3.13, and a lot of these features are things like no jQuery by default, using ECMA 6 classes, and several other things, including like co-location of templates in their context. In 3.13, all of those features were optionally configurably available. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think all of them. So the part of the point of the edition process, and this is our first edition, so we're still ironing the kinks out, but part of the point is absolutely that all of the features that are going to be in the edition are in a stable release prior to the edition itself being released.
Right. So I've actually just recently had some experience with this at my work. We're starting kind of an internal project that is an Octane project, and we actually started at 3.11 and we updated to 3.13 instead of to the beta, and then just turned out the flags on, which has been really nice to have that simple kind of normal, like, because 3.13 is a stable release. So we turn the optional feature flags on. If we have any issues, we just roll them back. And then, I mean, it seems kind of like a cherry on top. But the blog post that you're discussing was basically outlining how the original plan was for Octane to be released on 3.14, which I believe is or is not an LTS.
It is not an LTS, no. The next LTS would be 3.16.
I see. Okay. So really pushing this one version is not hugely relevant.
No, we don't think so. The thing that's a little bit unfortunate is we announced the specific date, essentially, by saying the version number, and we tied dates to features, which, as those of you that are developers know, is always a bad omen. But the set of
talking
things...
about all of Ember features get released on EmberConf Day.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that how it works? That's always how it's
so
historically
good.
worked.
Yeah, that's so good. So when you start having to do time zone math to figure out if you hit the day or not, like, yes, it happened to be correct if you're counting like Australia time or something, right? Like, no, that's wrong because that's.
I think I was about to say that's the opposite because that's in the future.
It's got to be some islands or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the set of things that are causing us to sort of hold off on 3.14 are things that are sort of fundamental to the experience of onboarding with Ember and a nice polish. Things like the Ember Inspector's component tree should show Glimmer components when you use them. And today it doesn't. Lots and lots of work has gone into making that work. There's open PRs. There's loads of folks.
I was about to say there's an
on
open PR that you referenced earlier.
Yeah, there's a ton of work. It's not just barely not quite across the finish line. And the point of the edition is that, yes, all these features have been released before, but like we need a point of time that is like really, really good for like any random new person that comes across Ember.js.com or anybody that's not familiar with the thing. Like it's really important to have that polish, and people will be sitting up and giving this a first look, and we want that first look to be really, really nice.
Yeah, as soon as they look at it and they see the features, even though you know that all these things are in the pipeline, if they're giving the 30-minute glance that most developers give new technologies,
Yeah, and they hit an error or they hit a bug or something. They're like, bounce, I'm out.
Yes, exactly. They're like, oh, it's so unintuitive. I downloaded the Ember Inspector and I could only see the entire container and all this other work that's really cool, but not the rendering tree.
Yeah, but I couldn't see any of the components I invoked. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is actually a totally valid critique. It's just...
totally valid. Yeah, absolutely.
Just frustrating. Yeah.
For sure. So I think I have this pulled up here. The things that are specifically in the issue category here were the Ember Inspector, as you mentioned, and something about the classic like file layout versus the co-located components. Is that right?
Yeah. So co-located templates are a feature that landed in just the first time in Ember 3.13, and you had to have a combination of Ember Source 3.13, Ember CLI 3.13, and a newer version of Ember CLI HTML bars 4.0 point whatever patch release that it was. I think 7 at this point.
Right.
And if you didn't have those things, it wouldn't work. And it just wasn't enabled, so that was fine. The larger problem is that the way co-location works in general, and just for those that aren't aware, component template co-location as a feature allows you to put your component and your components template literally side by side with the same exact name, where the only difference is .js or .hbs. So you could have a JavaScript file at app components foo.js, and you could have a template for that at app components foo.hbs, and that just works. Out of the box, no changes, just works. So that's quite a nice improvement from having to go to like templates / components, and like there's this weird disjointedness between jumping from the app components folder to the app templates folder. Some folks might think of this as like a conceptually similar to some things you could do with pods, or a thing that we originally pitched in mod unification. But it's not either of those things, but it's close. It's like inspired by the things that we learned in those experiences.
Right.
Oh, so sorry, I forgot the question. So the actual thing, the main blocker is that because we have to associate the HBS file with the actual class, like that's how it works internally. We take the handlebars file and we inline it as part of the class. We necessarily have to have the build pipeline invalidate on either the JS file changing or the HBS file changing. And right now, the way we do it is it's completely volatile. There's no caching at all, which means changing any JavaScript file or any handlebars file forces your entire build pipeline to rebuild, which is not great.
Not what you want.
So the remaining like sort of bastion of work, if you will, is to add more intelligent caching along the lines of something like Broccoli persistent filter, but not one file to one file. It has to be 2 to 1, basically. So it's a slight modification. Anyways, that's pretty in the weeds, but that's like the main remaining thing.
And that's mostly a performance thing. Like if you were to boot up a new app, that wouldn't actually immediately manifest as an issue.
Correct. In a small app or an app that doesn't take a long time to boot, it basically just means that your rebuild times can't avoid rebuilding the JS and the handle. Like if you change a Sass file, for example, it won't redo JavaScript, right? But if you change a template file, now it will have to redo JavaScript, right? Which is like, by some definition, like fine, air quotes. But for larger apps that already have like a 5 to 10 second rebuild time or more, like 30 seconds or a minute, or whatever the rebuild time happens to be.
The 30-second rebuve time is unheard of.
I've never been on an app that had a 30-second rebuild time.
Never done that.
Okay, guys.
Yeah, I've never really had consistent rebuilds that would take longer than like 10 seconds. But
I think the point is the same. Like basically making your rebuild times increase in more scenarios. Like there's 3 different main types of things. There's JavaScript stuff, there's the style stuff, and there's the templates. Mm-hmm. And today, if you change JS, you only have to rebuild JS. If you change templates, you only have to rebuild templates. Now you have to do both. And that's like, could increase your rebuild times non-trivially, because usually the JavaScript compilation is more time overall than the template compilation. So if you just previously were touching a template, it would rebuild much faster than...
Yeah. And I really can't imagine a host of scenarios where that actually would be relevant to like developer ergonomics and stuff.
Exactly. And that's why the caching was the last thing that we're going to add, right? Like I mentioned, I think we've had like 7 or 8 patch releases fixing pretty like fundamental bugs, like from early adopters they found. And finding those things is already hard enough. But if you add caching, now you are both fighting the caching and the bug, and then you cache the bug and you don't know if it's very, very hard. Sure. So like caching was intentionally the last thing to add because, well, caching is hard.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So in our Octane notes here, we also have a number of code mods that I believe after talking to you before this in our research section of the call, you mentioned that several of these have been touched. I thought for instance, the Ember angle brackets code mod was, like that was a thing that has existed for some time.
Yeah. So the Ember angle brackets code mod has been around a little bit, like maybe 8 months, 6 to 8 months. But we just recently released a new version, I think 2.x at this point. And the prior version, I think the last release was in July sometime. And the new version does lots of stuff. It fixes a ton of reported stylistic changes where the code mod running against your code base would like what it was doing before was it was actually running prettier against your template files after doing the code mod to like get them back into a decent format. But then Prettier's output is just quite different than what people are used to. So running the code mod would basically change every template, even if there was no updates. And the delta was quite high. It was actually hard to parse. And if you have hand curated your indentation for your nested helper invocations, for example, all of that got lost. And that was very frustrating to people. So the new update migrates to using another project called Ember Template Recast, which attempts to intelligently preserve all of the original source formatting and only update the areas that were actually changed when code modding. So if a given invocation or element or whatever wasn't touched, it just stays the same and it will be exactly the same source. So that just released this past week.
So my understanding of how like Recast, like the JavaScript AST transformer, the way it does that is it finds the end nodes that it needs to modify to make the change that you actually want, and then the remaining and then splices that into the I'm trying to think of like the way to describe this because I'm not particularly adept at this sort of thing, but it doesn't actually modify any part of the AST that's not directly relevant to the change you want to perform.
Yeah. So Ember Template Recast is a totally separate package from Recast, but the name intentionally infers the exact thing that you inferred.
Yes.
Like that was literally the point of why I called it that. And that is for every node in the AST, basically, if you didn't mutate the node, if there's no changes to the node, like there's no dirtiness or whatever, we use exactly the input source, direct one-to-one, no modification.
Right.
Like we don't touch anything at all.
And that ensures that literally nothing, assuming there's a high fidelity AST, there will be no changes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's still some areas in the Glimmer AST that need to be tweaked. For example, I think I was just mentioning to Chase that the block params in both elements and in block statements don't have any location information. So you don't have any clue where the block params themselves are physically located in the file. So like if someone has creative white space, like as new line pipe space, some like foo or something, and then an end pipe, like it's really hard to preserve that specific thing because the source AST doesn't have the location information for it. Now, those are things that we're fixing in the AST. We're working on fixing in the AST, but it takes time to work on that stuff. And anybody that's currently got a code mod written that assumes that there isn't location information when we change the values from being a string to being an object now where it has a type and a location, that's a breaking change. So we have to be really careful when we do these sort of API changes. Another code mod that did a template code mod that did basically the same pass is the no implicit this code mod. Recently been released. It's using template recast internally, and also it uses another library that we have that get together telemetry helpers, which lets you figure out what are all the names of all the helpers in your app and components in your app.
If you run the new blueprint, you get a template lint that is no longer recommended. In previous versions of the app blueprint, your ESLint would say recommended.
Mm-hmm.
Now it says Octane, and I was getting template errors, it not being able to distinguish between helpers versus
like local properties. Yeah,
local prop. Yeah, it just clicked that I'm supposed to do this dot. Wow, like my brain. Oof.
Yeah,
okay.
That's exactly what, and hopefully, you should file a bug on the linter because it should make it very clear from the message that is printed, you should update from curly path to curly this dot path or something.
It actually says something about interpolation. It doesn't say the thing. But yeah, I will file a bug. I had no idea. I thought it was a legitimate bug, and I was just like, I'll file it later.
So that's really cool. So removing that ambiguity, like curly foo in a template could mean a bunch of different things.
Yep.
In classic Ember. Like it could be a local property, it could be a helper invocation, it could be a block param, it could be lots of stuff, right?
Yeah, it could be a block param. It could be I guess that would be a block param. I was thinking of the let. It could be basically a local variable.
Yeah, a yielded local
that's also a block parameter. Yeah,
exactly. Yep. So it could be loads of things. So the Ember no implicit this code mod has also been updated and out there. We're working on even more updates to both of them to continue the polish, continue to make the experience of running it better. We're basically iteratively running it on applications and getting feedback and folks telling us what's working, what looks right in the diff, what seems wrong, and whether we agree necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
It's some of the stuff is subjective. Some of the formatting stuff is subjective. But for the most part, there is a correctness factor that is approaching really, really good. Like I think we're really honing in on a good place.
Yeah, that's great.
So we can at least ensure that it's correct technically. Like it will invoke the invocation is mapped right in like the no implicit this or the Anchor bracket one. Once we get to the point where we're just working on the formatting, I think that's a good place to be, because then we know we've got it. Like, yeah, your tests are going to work or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So a couple of the other code mods you have in here are the Ember native class code mod, the Ember component template co-location migrator. All of those seem like we should include those in the show notes, and people should take a look at those. Would you recommend, if you want to follow along with these code mods, to follow? Can you follow on GitHub like the Ember-code mods organization?
You can certainly do that. And also, like we just recently, I guess in the last couple of months, created this Ember code mods org, and I've been really, really inviting anybody that's trying to write code mods that are like general code mods, like not project specific ones, but like general code mods, just like inviting them as owners into the org. So if you have a code mod that is like a general purpose Ember code mod, ping me Discord or email or whatever. Happy to add additional folks as owners. The goal here with this org is a couple of things. One of them is to increase bus factor, to like have more people that are able to be owners of these projects. Another is to slowly increase the number of like experts in this space. Like this is a pretty nuanced thing to do well. And it's a balance of like absolute correctness versus 99%. Like you have to, it's a balancing act to figure out exactly what the right defaults are for the code mod, and having like a group of folks that have done this and are interested in doing it really, really helps maintenance over time and stuff.
And examples too. Like I find every time I work on a code mod, and I increasingly do project specific code mods, as you were mentioning before, every time I look at like other code mods that I know are well factored, and that's how you can access this, or that's how you build this structure and stuff like that. So
and having it all in one place helps that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I like
helps
that a
us share like shared utilities across repos. Like I see this one is using some shared utility to add imports and ensure they're there or something. And let's just extract that.
If you do the project specific code mods, you should make one repo for your organization and use Ember CLI code mod.
No, code mod CLI. You were close.
Code mod CLI. I was so close. So close. I worked on that actually, but we use that internally, and you get built-in documentation. And stuff.
Yeah, it's a really. I think all of these code mods, with the exception of the template co-location one, are based on code mod CLI. It gives you a default test harness out of the box. It uses Jest, and it confirms like your transformation is idempotent, for example. So if you run it on an input, it has the right output. But also, if you run it on the output, it doesn't change anything, right? Like that's actually really important, and it's a thing that a lot of people don't think about.
And it automatically does npx commands, so you don't actually have to
install
repository. You don't have to install anything. You can just say npx do the thing, and it does the thing, and then you're good. So I highly recommend that.
And I think you can easily make transforms for templates or for JS files or TS files.
TS files, that was a revelation. I didn't realize you could do that. I saw some examples.
Yeah, so it's got built-in support for TypeScript and JavaScript. The handlebars, you just have to specify the additional extension for HBS. But just the other day, actually, I helped someone make one that also works on Sass. Like there's like basically any place where you have an input and you have an expected output, and there happens to be a thing that can parse ASTs, you can use this for. So it's pretty neat.
Someone is going to comment and say that is not true in this case or that case. But things that generally work on AST Explorer will probably work in some form or fashion.
The last one of these that I wanted to mention was the Ember component template co-location migrator. The idea here is it moves your files around. So it's not quite your normal average code mod, because it's actually moving files locations. But the idea is it'll move things out of app templates, components, foo into app components, foo.
So this probably isn't written in terms of an actual code mod, like with an AST, that's probably just a script, right?
So ironically, not ironically, there are actual AST parts in it. For example, if you move a template file and somebody was importing that template file, well, you've got something to update. Just for example, that's the biggest case, like where people were importing the template directly and then either reusing it as layout property on something or something to that effect. That's where you really have to, like, that's a thing. That's what the add-on generator does, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That has to be terrible for like the caching problem you're talking about. If you can import the layout,
it makes it quite annoying. Yes.
That was a very muted but filled.
Yes. So the good news is when we're finally on this component template co-location thing, there won't be modules defined for templates. There won't be additional lookups. Like there's no resolver usage. It's literally just you can imagine it being a weak map association with a class. So now you can just re-export the class. You don't have to do both. That kind of thing. It gives you the benefits of the reasons why people used to use the layout property, but without actually having to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So sadly, we're all out of time. We had more to talk about. Maybe the title will give it away for you. But we will be back very soon to talk about these things. Until then, I'm Chase McCarthy.
I'm Robert Jackson.
And I'm Jonathan Jackson.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
How does our outro song go? It's been too long.
I just know there's a big drop.